Hello, welcome back. Acrylic painting techniques. We've got Sgraffito and stamping in line for this video. Sgraffito we have done before, but with our past experiences of Sgraffito, it was all about creating lines in the paper. This is going to be about creating lines in wet paint. So we have a dry layer of paint here that we're going to be working on top of. It's pretty important to have a dry layer of paint underneath. That way something shows through your scratches. So I'm going to be working with a paint that has a high contrast, this phthalo blue. I just got my brush a little bit wet so that my paint is a little bit smoother when I'm painting it on, because as you can see, my paint is pretty thick. The paint that you are working with may not be as thick. You might not have to put your paintbrush in the water, so just keep an eye out for the thickness of your paint and if you need to do that. Because if you dip your paintbrush in water and add water to your paint, it makes your paint thinner and more translucent. So keep that in mind. All right, so here we go. I've got my paint. I'm going to add it to my yellow block. And I'm working pretty quickly here because you don't want your paint to dry before you're able to add in your Sgraffito. So this is all about scratching layers into the paint. I use the back end of my brush, and here I am cleaning it off, making sure that I'm not saving a dirty brush. So this is super cool for being able to create textures in paint and showing things underneath, but not making it super apparent what bright yellow is under there. Stamping is another really fun technique that I like to do with my brush, the brush end specifically, but you can use other things for stamping, like a marker or a bottle, something with a texture on the bottom of it. That would be cool. Either side of the marker. Most things that are plastic would be a really good material to do this with. So I'm just going to swirl the back end of my paintbrush into my little chunk of paint here. So I have some paint on the back of my brush. I'm just going to use it like a stamp and dot that in. Wiping the back end of my paintbrush off, of course, so I don't leave a dirty brush. I'm going to give this a try. This is a marker. I'm going to add a little bit of water to my brush, and this time I'm going to paint it on. That way I can control how much paint is on that tool, because this is now a tool. And I'm going to stamp. Hey, that's pretty cool. And the more you do this, the less paint will be on your self-created stamp, and it will slowly fade to be a lighter stamp. Some people have done whole artworks with stamping with coffee on the bottom of a coffee mug. That's kind of an interesting way of going about painting. Make sure that you clean everything off before you put it back. And what else could I use for stamping? The side of a coin. I have a paint cap here that has a really interesting texture to it. It has little slots on it. So if I would add some paint on that, just dragging some paint across, and then rolling that, that creates a really interesting texture. So stamping is all about creating those textures from other objects. So you'll want to find objects around you, or bring objects in, or think about what's in your backpack that can be used as a stamp. All right, so our next installment will be going over scraping and masking. These will be using some other non-traditional tools as well. So just keep an eye out for that and have fun painting.